Coaches. This is Stacie. I'm here with Allie, and we're continuing on setting yourself up for success, setting your gym up for success next season. Crazy early to talk about next season, but we want to go through this whole year with the end in mind. For those of you who have nationals this weekend, good luck. And you can just listen to this next week. So setting up, what we're talking about this week is rewriting your season story. So here's what happens. Your gymnast falls a couple of times. And now their season story is, I can't compete. I'm bad at beam. I always fall in meets. They adopt something that happened that they didn't like. And so last week we talked about letting what you're going to let go of. Not only do they not let go of it, they make it something defining about them in their moral being and who they are as a gymnast and their character. Instead of just this was a circumstance that I fell. And so one of the things that we want to help them do is to identify those stories they're telling themselves and then rewrite the stories in a way that serves them. So, Allie, people say all the time, but you can't rewrite the past. Those are facts. Mm-hmm. That's what happened. You want to talk about that?
Yes. Okay. So the reality is when we think back to our past, there is one or two things that are circumstances, which are facts. Like at this meet, I fell on beam. That's a fact, right? Or my coach said this to me after the meet. That could be a fact. But the rest of the story that we tell ourselves are all our stories about the fact. And what I mean by, okay, so we go from I fell at this meet on beam to, like Coach Stacie was saying, I'm terrible at beam. I'm never going to be a good competitor. I'm not good enough to ever qualify because I can't hit my beam routine, or blah, 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 all the horrible voices in their head. That's all their opinions and their judgments about the fact. So really the past, the story that you're telling yourself is just that. It's a story. It's a bunch of opinions and judgments about what actually happened. And so one of the first things we actually like to do is get them to, one, just write out the story they're telling themselves. Just get the entire story out onto paper and just word vomit is what I like to say, what they think, how they think last season went, and what they're making it mean. Okay. And then go back and read through it and circle or underline, just mark off the parts of that that's an actual fact. And here's the thing, they're going to think all of it's a fact. They're going to be like, it is, I fell on beam, so it's a fact that I'm terrible at beam. I'm like, no, that is absolutely not true. There are plenty of people that could watch you do a beam routine and you could fall and they'll still think you're an amazing beamer. We actually had a level 9 do that this weekend. She fell on her jumps, still scored above a 9 and placed. And it is I do not think oh, you're a terrible beamer now because she fell one time on a beam routine, right? So point being, just being able to, at regionals, qualified to nationals still, seriously. The point is they're going to think their entire past story they're telling themselves is a fact. And so being able to help them just get it all out and find the true facts is going to be the first step to helping them rewrite their story. Because Stacie's right. We can't change the facts. We cannot go back and change the fact that you fell, but we can go back and change what we're actually making that mean about us as a person, about us as a gymnast, and just looking at it and deciding if what we're making it mean is helpful to us. Sometimes we have things that we're like, yeah, that's great. I want to keep that. And sometimes we're like, wow, that is not going to help me next season. I think we need to talk through this a little bit. So Stacie, now that we've word vomited our past, we've looked at finding the facts. What do we do next? And do you have any other tips or tricks on helping them narrow in on what is an actual fact versus an opinion?
So one of the things that we teach them to differentiate between a circumstance or a fact and a thought is, would everyone in the world agree upon this? Mm-hmm. So would everyone agree that this was true? And so that kind of helps narrow it down. So go back and circle only the things that everyone in the world would agree with you on. And then that can help them get down to the facts. Then take those facts and rewrite the story in a way that serves you. Rewrite the story about what you were learning, rewrite the story about the things you did super well, rewrite the story about who you're becoming and how you're growing, rewrite the story about I fell on beam and then I'm amazing at getting back up and finishing out so that I still score above a 9 and qualify to the next level. Like, change the story to something that serves you, that when you go forward will help you. And so then take those facts, just write out just the facts. Big deep breath, look at just the facts, and then rewrite a story that's going to serve you about those facts and what you want to make it mean and how you want to move forward in a way that will help set you up for success next season. And so this one's a little bit deeper, and I would encourage you as coaches to also do it. Tell, like, what's the story? We all do this. This isn't just kids. Like, we tell ourselves stories and we make something mean. What are you making it mean for yourself as a coach about how the season went? That you're a good coach, that you're not a good coach, that your kids are lazy, that your kids are amazing. Like, what are you making it about your kids? What are you making about yourself? Like, do this for yourself first. Write out your story, circle just the facts, and then rewrite a story that serves you. It's super powerful. And I use it in lots of areas of my life. So this one takes a little time with your littles. Obviously, they're not going to like write out whole stories. So sometimes you can have them like turn and tell their stories to each other, tell their stories to the group. If you've got a lot, there's not going to be time for you to have every one of them tell. So get them in partners, those kinds of things, and maybe just write down the facts. Draw a picture of how the story went, any of those kinds of things. So we want to let go of the past before we move on to looking into the future. And we want our past stories to serve us so that we can look into the future with a fresh start that is really going to set us up for success.
And I just want to add real quick, people get a little nervous during this time because they're like, worried that we get a little like too touchy feely and we're like okay with what happened and all that kind of stuff. And that's not what it's about. Like, we're not here to tell you to be like, you know what, I'm so stoked I fell at that meet. Like, that is not the purpose of this exercise. The purpose is like, okay, what actually happened? And then like you can tell the story in a way of like, it was a bummer that I fell, but now because of that, this is what I'm doing and learning for next year. Or this is something that I learned in the middle of season, and now this is what I'm going to try. So I don't want you to think that this has to be like changing every story from like disappointed and upset to happy. Like, that's not the point of it. The point of it is like more like questions like we asked last week. And that's why we started with it last week of like, what did you learn and what can you bring with you? And using those kind of questions to help you rewrite it so that it's motivating you.
And one of the things too is like, everybody falls. Everybody makes mistakes, and it's from our failures that we learn and we can grow for the future. But even in that, like, every elite gymnast falls at some point in the season. Every NCAA people mess up at nationals and then secure the winning routine. Same person, same meet, like we're not robots. Gymnasts aren't robots. Coaches aren't robots. There's no such thing as like a perfect season or even a perfect meet. And so being able to allow that to be okay, because it is reality. And so as long as we're like fighting reality and being like, no, I can't ever fall, I can't ever mess up, there's nobody who goes through life without messing up. Of course we're going to mess up. And so it's more about like accepting that it happened and allowing it to be okay that we're human and that we make mistakes, but then learning from it so that we can grow and we can improve and we can get better and all of the things. Like, most kids fall because they're thinking, I can't fall. And so like figuring out how to grow through that instead of having that exception, but for sure, we're not trying to feel happy about everything that happened. We're trying to accept what happened and then tell ourselves things moving forward that are going to help us instead of hinder us. Like when we tell ourselves moving forward that I'm terrible at beam or that I always fall in meets, we're always going to fall in meets and we're going to be terrible at beam all year long. So when we rewrite that story to I'm learning how to compete on beam, then we're going to learn how to compete on beam. Right. So that's kind of the examples that we're going for here. All right. Next week, we start setting goals. We're going to set some different types of goals each week for the next 3 weeks so that by the end of the month, we're totally ready and prepared to be focused on what we want for the rest of the year. So we'll see you there.